The Deadpool movies looked a lot different on set than what we saw on screen. The animators and VFX specialists worked overtime to bring us larger-than-life characters like Colossus, major destruction sequences, car chases, incredible superpowers, and the entire city we see on screen.
Go get him, Tiger! Big CGI fight coming up!
Number 1. We can't talk about Deadpool without mentioning his mask.
We started sculpting the mask even before we were awarded the project. It was that important to me to get that right because that's everything.
They start with a digital scan of Ryan Reynolds' face, and then they sculpt on top of it.
There's so many little subtle things, how tall the head is, how skinny the jawline is, the shape of the eyes.
After sculpting it with clay, they digitize it and then 3D print it.
We have to build things in there so that he can breathe and the sweat isn't causing a problem.
There are even versions of the masks with eyepieces that pop out.
There's a release mechanism button in the back. Push it, pull the eyes.
There are different types of eyes for all of the different stunts that are performed. Number 2. Not a great scene for the X-Force. This sequence was shot with a combination of the real actors for close-ups and CG doubles for faraway shots. Did you notice Brad Pitt's cameo?
What was shooting that like? Pretty much the easiest thing I've ever done.
Fun fact, the director of the movie, David Leitch, used to be Brad Pitt's stunt double, starting in Fight Club and going all the way until 2004, before becoming a director.
Mr. Dave Leitch here was
Hired as my stunt double.
Another fun fact is Brad Pitt's payment for performing his 2-second cameo was a cup of coffee hand-delivered to him by Ryan Reynolds. Number 3. What a sight to see.
Why wouldn't you cover that up? A warrior has nothing to be ashamed of.
One thing that made this performance pretty great was that they actually used Ryan Reynolds' legs. They thought if his legs were restricted in any way, it might affect his body language. He's dressed normally from the waist up, but has a motion capture suit on from the waist down. They also had him walk on his knees, as that made him the perfect height for the toddler legs he was sporting. The only thing he had to worry about was leaning too far back or forward when taking each step. Number 4. You guessed it, all CGI. They decided to use a motion capture suit for Cable's arm because they didn't like how restricted the design would be if they decided to go practical. With a digitally rendered version, they'd be able to change the look or remove his arm easily if they needed to. His neck and chest area, though, was a combination of both prosthetics and CGI. Number 5. What is Deadpool without a car chase? It's pretty obvious, but this sequence was filmed on a soundstage. Because of that, they were able to do a bit more practically than they would have otherwise. CGI was still used to create the other cars, the environment, and of course, when Cable jumps out of the exploding truck. Number 6. We've got a Dark Phoenix crossover here. Did you know that this scene never actually happened in real time? It was all done with CGI. The production team of Deadpool 2 sent the camera lens info and lineup data to director and fellow producer on Deadpool, Simon Kinberg. He was the director of Dark Phoenix, so while filming that, he got a perfect shot of the mutants that matched the camera angle and lighting on Deadpool 2, thus making it super easy for Wade to be superimposed right on top of it. Did you know that was a CGI shot when you first watched it? Number 7. Did you know Ryan Reynolds is also the voice of the Juggernaut? An actual actor wasn't needed to play him, but they did need a few lines for his character.
I'm gonna rip you in half now.
So they thought it best to use Ryan Reynolds instead of bringing in a new actor. Though they just used a motion capture suit on a static Juggernaut model, they purposely modeled his facial expressions after director David Leitch. Number 8. A lot of that was actually practical. The program Houdini was used for the more complex shots, like intestines. But for the scene where Deadpool cuffs his own hand, they used actual buckets of fake blood.
Oh my god, nasty.
Oh, there's the money shot, baby.
They used 2 buckets for that sequence alone. Number 9. It's all digital. There was a lot of green screen usage in the making of Deadpool. They wanted the city to be a mix of Vancouver, Detroit, and Chicago, so the animators broke the city up into 12 sections in order to pull off whatever they needed for a specific shot. The director Tim Miller is also an animator, so that really helped with bringing his vision of Deadpool to life. There were over 1,200 difficult shots that needed to be captured strictly with the magic of animation. You're just trying to replicate reality through a different medium, and you have to pay closer attention to reality in order to replicate it in CG. Number 10. Is this a good time for a Piccolo reference? Though definitely not as seamless of a regeneration, Deadpool's limbs take time to grow back. The shot of his tiny hand was achieved with a digital limb. It was tricky because it couldn't be like a baby hand, because a baby hand doesn't actually look like that. It needed to be a fetus hand. They were sending us this horrible reference of fetuses, but it was so we could get that translucency right. Number 11. Let's talk about Negasonic Teenage Warhead. Unsurprisingly, those powers were all CGI, but started off as just concept art. They wanted something that looked like solar flares coming straight from the sun. When it came to the final sequence at the end of the first film, Negasonic Teenage Warhead uses Deadpool like a fuel air bomb. That sequence was shot entirely with a green screen, and then they filled in the explosion with animation. Number 12. They used rotting fruit and maggot-eating meat as a reference. They built humorous effects as textures and then digitally rendered the layers to map them onto a digital model before creating the 3D topology. The more the compositor was getting grossed out from his own work, the more I knew we were closer to a final. Number 13. Remember when Wade first faces off against Francis? The only reason he was able to escape his asphyxiation pod was by setting the whole place aflame. That fire was a combination of practical set pieces that were lit aflame as well as digital renditions. Their biggest struggle was trying to make the fire look layered and not flat against the building. So the creative direction they went was to not make the building look like it was being engulfed by flames, but more like it was falling apart. Number 14. It took 5 actors to create Colossus. The first performer captured his movements during a motion capture studio session.
But there was also a separate 6-foot 9-inch performer filmed on location in a classic grey tracking suit.
They still wanted him to be taller, so he either had to wear platform shoes or an extra headpiece for height. Colossus's face was modeled after a third actor because of his jawline, while a fourth performer recorded all of the dialogue and a fifth performer was used strictly for facial animations.
The animators get to tweak and refine this performance and adjust it for the kind of deliberately solid metallic look.
Number 15. A freeway chase, but without the freeway. In the first Deadpool film, they had a difficult time finding a freeway they could use to pull off the insane stunts involved in the chase. It ended up being too much of a hassle, so the solution was to use vehicle interiors in front of a green screen, while utilizing multicam freeway plate shots in Detroit, and then constructing the freeway and the other cars digitally. Real freeway or not, it definitely made for an epic car chase. So we've got toddler legs, regenerated limbs, the Juggernaut, some incredible car chases, and some explosives going on in these movies. That, combined with the brilliant prosthetics and practical effects, make Deadpool one of the most incredible comic book franchises on screen. What was your favorite CGI moment?